Everyone, Happy New Year. My name is Dave once again, and you are back watching the Stance Everything channel, and we are here today working on parts of my 1951 GMC truck. So the last few videos I've spent way too much time doing bodywork, so I'm going to chill from that for a little bit. I will show you the completed bedside that I kind of didn't get done in the last video a bit later, but today we are going to be working on, this is a running board for my truck. As you can see, it is in okay shape. But a couple things that I do want to fix is there's a support here that's obviously rotted out. This I can straighten up a little bit. This is how we mount the step. And then here, this piece I'm probably just going to take off because I think it's a little bit too far gone. And then I'm going to straighten out the end of here as well. First thing we're going to do is remake this support here. If you can see, there's a bit of rot through on the step. And I just want this support to be back because I'm not going to spend too much time fixing this. I do want it to look like it is aged, but I don't want it to collapse if someone stands on it. So to do this, I am finally no longer going to use the poor man's brake, which is my bench. I recently picked up this 30-inch benchtop brake from Princess Auto, and we are going to use this little piece underneath here. It's about 20 gauge to see how this thing works and see if I can make up that piece. And then I might remake it after that in thicker gauge material after we do some strength tests on it. But I'm pretty stoked to see how this works. I'm going to take some measurements of this piece of metal and this brace here so that I can kind of transfer it, make myself a template. So I've taken my measurements of what was previously that brace and I've transferred them over to here. The reason that I'm using masking tape versus my Sharpie to mark this up is just my Sharpie seems to be running out. But anyway, this is the center section. This is going to be the first break. Then that's going to be the second break there to make the full flange. Center, break 1, and then that's going to be break 2. And then once that's done, I will trim everything up. I am keeping some extra material on here just in case I do need to grip it to make the brake easier. The thing that I do have to figure out once I get the brake on the table is which ones to do first so that I can keep working with the piece of metal and not sort of work myself into a hole or a corner. To do that, I might grab some scrap metal and just throw a couple brakes in on a scrap piece to see how it goes, although this might also end up just a test piece too. We will see. So I am going to unbox that. I'll put the camera somewhere around here and walk you guys through how it works. Alright guys, I know the camera's in a bit of a weird spot, but this is really the best place that I could put it to show you what I have here. So this is the bench mounted brake from Princess Auto. If this video does get popular or you're wondering, no, Princess Auto did not give me this. I spent $69.99 on this. My goal is to be able to break quick pieces of metal without hammering it over the edge of my bench because I'll be able to work later into the night if I'm not making a pile of noise, which is what I was doing before. So it's pretty simple. This actually didn't come with any instructions, but it's really only came with a couple of parts. So you got this piece of stock, which you put the metal you want to break down here, slap this on top of it, and then you grab these two handles, which are removable, put them into the brake, and then you just fold it over to 90, and that does do what you need it to. There are some holes in it if you want to mount it to your bench. Obviously, I use my bench for a bunch of stuff, so I'm not going to be mounting this. One thing that does kind of suck, maybe depending on what your setup is, there's nothing to clamp this bar to the brake out of the box, so you got to have your own clamps. Luckily, I have a bunch. So first things first, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to crudely draw some lines on this and try and make that U first and see sort of how and where I need to put this to be able to bend it on that bigger sheet. So let's see what we can do. So that first break went pretty well. It's a pretty good corner there. It actually overbent it a little bit, so I just might tweak it back a bit with my hands. This is some really lightweight material, and again, I'm just practicing on this one to see how far I have to bend things. So not too worried about it, but let's try the second one. Okay, so break number 2 was a little bit better just because I knew how far I could go with it. It's pretty quick. It bends it pretty quickly. I'm going to need to put a flange in here next to be able to have that position for it to mount to the step. Okay, so I was able to put that that second bend in there, but I'm going to pull the camera down off the tripod and show you a couple of limitations that I realized while trying to do this quick test piece. Okay, so all around this did work out pretty well. I do have sort of the piece bent here. It's a little bit funky shape just because I was figuring out the limitations of where to stop when I'm bending something. And I was able to put that second break in. I did run out of material, unfortunately, to be able to get it across the point where you bend it. So that is something that I'm going to have to keep in mind when I put that piece in. I'm just going to have to keep in mind how much material I need. Luckily, I have a lot of excess, so I should be okay. The second thing I did realize is because this brake goes into a different direction than this initial one, is I need space to be able to get this under. So in the most Canadian fix possible, I put a couple of pucks underneath the brake, and I was able to sort of slide this under here. It gave me the space that I need. So you know, that would have sucked if I did have this mounted to the bench. I wouldn't have been able to sort of do that. But now that I know that, I'll just keep a couple pucks handy to account for that when I'm using this. Other than that, it worked out really well, and it was way, way, way quieter than bending this over the edge of my bench, which obviously I could have done, or, you know, the anvil on the end of the vise, but it would have been really loud and it wouldn't have been that straight. So let's grab that piece of metal. I'm going to put the camera on the tripod. I'm probably going to put it at working height this time so you guys can kind of sort of see every operation that I make a little bit clearer. But yeah, let's see how it goes. Not the worst way to do it, but I gotta admit I am a little bit disappointed that I did have to resort to this after buying that brake. Might just be because it's my first time using it and I didn't think all the operations through all the way, but let's see if I can put this flange in it now. So unfortunately I'm 0 for 2 here. I was able to do that brake pretty well. You can see that I need to tweak it a little bit. But now I can't use that brake for this other flange because it will not fit in there. I probably should have thought of that before I started bending up this piece, but it didn't occur to me that it would hit sort of the bottom underneath there, preventing me from sliding it in all the way to get that next brake out of it. And again, when I did my test piece was a little bit too small. I guess it's a little bit too large. No worries, I can finish the rest of this brake, hopefully the classic fashion way, on my bench here. So I'm going to clamp this down and then we will see where we get to put that next flange in it, because I'm really hoping I don't waste this piece. Not that it costs a lot of money or anything like that, but it's just a little bit disappointing to waste this piece of metal after prepping it, measuring it, all that stuff. So I think we'll be able to figure it out. Okay, good news, bad news. Good news, it's bent in the way that I needed to. Bad news, if you can't already tell, I bent it actually on the wrong line. So this is way too tall to go into there. So thankfully I haven't cut anything, I haven't done anything. I'm just gonna bend it again on this line in here, and we will be done. I am not going to time lapse that because honestly I'm a little embarrassed and it's going to be the exact same process. Okay, so without the compressor interrupting me this time, I'm going to rebend those flanges. I'm not going to do this on camera just because it's basically the same process, but I'll come back when everything's all in shape and a little bit closer to actually being welded onto that step. Okay, I'm back. It's actually a couple hours later, so it is in the evening now. My son came back from playing with a friend, a neighbor, so I had to put the project aside for a bit and come back to it later. But I did clean this piece up quite a bit. I bent it, then I bent this over the bench, hammered and dollied it a little bit. If you bring it over to here, it is actually a wider piece than the previous one, and that is just a straight up mistake for me measuring where the bender would actually place the bends once I used it. That's just something that I'm gonna get a little bit better with the more I use the bender. I am not going to remake this piece because it's not gonna be a big deal where that's gonna be mounted. You're really not gonna notice it. Somehow you got under my truck low enough to see that, you can definitely call me out that I made it a little bit wider. Next is I'm gonna drill a couple of holes in here. I'm gonna hit it with some weld through primer, and then we will weld it to the bottom of this running board. I'm not cleaning up this running board entirely or painting the entire thing. Again, I'm gonna leave the running board's patina, and this is just really to give it back some of its rigidity since it is also rusted out a little bit in here. I'm gonna do my best to fix that, but I figured I should put the support back in too. When I spray the weld through primer, I am also going to spray the side of my bedside so that you guys can see the progress on that, because I left you hanging in the last video. So I'm going to drill some holes and spray some paint. I'll definitely time lapse that so you guys can see it. And then once the paint is drying, we will start banging out all the damage in there and remove this here, because that is pretty much roached out, as well as remove all this. So I'm going to put the camera on the tripod and we are going to time lapse a few things. Here we are. The bedside is now officially in guide coat, and we can get to sanding that and patina matching it later, which means that other than this area here, which I do have to finish, and this area here, which needs to be finished, the bed is pretty much done. Pretty much done. I mean, there's a lot of work left, being that paint and patina all is going to take me a long time to do, but we will get there after we do the tubs on the bed. So that's done. I want to show you that because I didn't get to complete it at the last video, and this is now in weld through primer as well. So the next step is going to be getting this off. So I'm going to blast that off there. I don't know if I'm going to time lapse that because it's going to be pretty boring and pretty messy. So I might just come back when it's clean. Alright, what's up guys? Sorry about that. The camera ended up dying, but I did do some work while the battery was dead. So I have taken off the previous brace, so I just need to clean this up where I'm going to put my tack welds. And I've also taken off the previous step mount that was here so that I have a little bit more room to work to fix that dent, and it was all rotted out anyway, so I definitely don't need that there. So I ended up watching the World Junior game, and it's a little bit later for me to get out in the garage than usual. It's coming up on about 11 o'clock. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to clean this all up, spray it with some weld through primer, and then we're going to crank this bad boy on and zap these tacks in. At least that is the goal. We will see how far I get. I'm hoping to get that far today because I'd really like to get that progress done, and then we can move on to banging the dents out of this, patching up a couple holes here, and then we can call it a wrap on the first video of 2023. So without further delay, let's put the camera on the tripod and keep working. I busted out my wire wheel on my grinder, which I actually hate because of wires potential to fly out and stick into things, but it was the only way really to sort of clean out this area. So I've cleaned it out now, and I've applied some weld-through primer to where I'm going to do all my repairs. I've also applied some weld-through primer to the other side of the piece that's going to go in here. So the first thing I'm going to do, oh, and I also ground a corner here just for the welder to get it ground. First thing I'm going to do, and this could snowball really, really quickly, is actually try and fill in some of these holes here. And then once I'm done that, I'm going to put the channel over it, and then we can kind of call this area of the repair fixed for this video. So I'm going to figure out a good place to put the tripod, and then we're going to crank up the welder and get to work. So I did just welded in that piece just now. Most of the spot welds actually went pretty well and exactly as I'd hoped. This one went a little bit funky, and this one went a little bit funky just because it was a little bit further away from the running board than I wanted, and I wasn't really able to push it down as hard as I wanted with this piece of pipe here. But I'm pretty happy with how this all went in. It's definitely going to add some rigidity and support back to this running board. And if I flip it over, you can see that I did get good penetration on all of the spot welds, which is perfect. I'll just knock this down a little bit and probably try and just get a little bit of these spot welds looking a little bit less obvious. Maybe leave it outside for a little bit, let it rust a bit. If you can see a bit of it, that's again not a huge deal because it is patina. Unfortunately, I could not get anything to hold weld-wise for this piece here. I'm probably just going to leave it, honestly. I might come back and revisit this later and maybe try and do something, but I think leaving it might just be the way to go. You know, keep a little bit of patina into this step here. I am going to knock this down a little bit so you can't tell that I tried to weld it. But, you know, I don't want to spend too much time on this step. This is a patina truck. It is going to show a little bit of wear, and I think a bit of wear here is not a big deal. And honestly, if it does bug me or rot out more, I can just look for another step down the road and kind of keep moving on. I'm not going to let this stop me from driving the truck anytime soon. So the final thing that we're going to do, which we are actually not going to do today, is fix all this damage here. I definitely do need to hammer and dolly this back because there is a filler piece that interfaces with this point that does need to be pretty nice. So that is going to be the next part of this video, is going to be hammering this back into shape, but that will take place tomorrow because I'm going to go inside now because I hit my goal for tonight. And then we'll see you tomorrow. Actually, you know what I might do? I'm probably going to put a little bit of black paint on what I just did, and then we can call it done. So yeah, let's do that, and then we'll come back the next cut. This will be painted black, and it will be the next day where we're going to start hammering this out. So we're back. It's another day in the garage, and I did end up spraying some black paint last night. It didn't turn out the greatest. I am going to go over it with another coat, but really I just didn't want it to be raw so that it could rust out again super quickly. I'm not going to end up spraying the rest of this in black. Probably just any of the areas that I do touch. Again, I'm not super worried about these rotting through. This metal is pretty thick, and they're overall pretty solid, and honestly, if I worry about them too much, I will just end up getting another set. But what I am going to do is fix this area here. It is not looking as it's supposed to look. So give me 1 sec. I'm going to pull that board off of the wall there, and I'll show you what the end is supposed to look like. Okay, so I've got both boards here, and the first thing you can see is pretty obvious. My support ended up way wider. I did mention that before. I kind of messed up my bend measurements and ended up wider. I don't think it's ultimately going to be much of a problem in the end. It is still not as high as this, which is actually going to be the lowest point on my truck. That's what's going to lay out first, so I'm not too worried about it. What I am worried about though is the end here. Funny enough, this step was actually shortened at some point by someone who was not me. They did a really reasonable job. You can't really tell from this side, which is pretty cool. So I'm not really going to worry about it too much, but one thing that is missing is there's supposed to be 3 of these. 1, 2, and a third one that goes in about here, which used to be here on this one, but I cut it out because it was super rotten. So I am going to pick up probably at least 2 of these for 1, 2. I did straighten this one back out, so I think this is going to be okay. So I'll probably just pick up 2 and then weld them back on at a later point once I have the steps on the truck itself. What I am going to do though is use this as a reference point to fix all of this damage in here. This needs to be straight because there is a panel that butts up against that. So with this kind of off to the side, I'm going to use it as a reference point to fix this area right here, which is pretty knackered. But with a hammer and a dolly, I should be able to straighten it out pretty reasonably. So I am going to, once again, camera, tripod, get my hammer and dolly out, which is underneath here, and see what I can come up with. Alright guys, I made some pretty good progress. This is nice and smooth now considering where it started before. This area still needs a little bit of help. I actually realized that this is all really pretty bent. So what needs to happen is this needs to basically all rotate this way, and then I can straighten that out and get it quite a bit better. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm not really sure. I probably don't need to clamp this down or anything. I could probably just use this and the adjustable wrench and wrench it over and then start hammering and dollying it, and then it's honestly going to be pretty solid. I might, once it's done, see if I do want to fill in some of these holes. You can actually see that it's been brazed there at one point, but let's get it back into shape and then see if I want to patch anything up. I probably won't, considering again I just want it to look like consistent patina. So you've got a little bit of a good damage spot there, obviously the aforementioned spots up here, but I've got my support on the inside now, so that's all solid. You know what, maybe I'll just leave these, you know, scuff it down a little bit. Maybe what the plan will be to do is just spray this over quick with some black paint and then scuff it down with like a 3M pad or something like that, just to sort of match the patina. I'm not 100% sure yet. I think that I'm going to fix it, straighten it out, and then probably put these aside for a little bit until the truck comes back, and then I want to play with them again once I get those running board landings and stuff to weld to the bottom of this. So we're going to get this straight for this video, and then that's going to be a wrap. So I'm going to put the camera back where it was, and we're going to keep moving on this. Alright everyone, now we're cooking with gas. Remember when I said I wouldn't have to put it in the vise? Obviously that was a complete lie. I ended up putting this side of the step into the vise, especially down here where it was twisted it back, and then worked it with the hammer and dolly. You can see that this now comes together pretty close to how it would have on a factory one. So if you look, those two, that corner comes together. This corner obviously doesn't come together quite as nicely because there's a lot of damage in there. I might try and work this out a little bit. I actually realized that that's kind of curled in, so maybe I might be able to curl that back out and then kind of pinch it in a little bit more, or maybe I might just leave it because now it's going to be really hard for me to get in there. honestly, I'm probably just going to leave that, or at least wait until I see how it kind of butts up against the body piece that it hits here, and then make my decisions from there. But in general, this is way straighter than it was previously. You're especially going to notice it when I flip it over. Okay, so flipping this step over, this is way less splayed out than it was before. I could probably do a little bit more work in here, and I just might, now that I look at this a little bit, just bend it back a little bit. But really, it's going to be kind of how it is right now. And I'm really happy with kind of how this came together, considering the damage, especially through here. I didn't think I'd be able to get this back to a nice spot, and as I've said a couple of times in this video, this is where a body panel sits up against it. I'll splice in a video so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about and why I'm so concerned about this area and not quite as concerned about here. However, all that being said, I'm going to call this a success for this video. I think we got some really good progress done. We got to use my new brake from Princess Auto. Again, they did not sponsor this video. I paid for that. I used it. You saw how well it worked and how I had some difficulty in the end and ended up having to use my bench anyway. And then we did straighten this out enough for now. Obviously, there is a little bit more work to do on these steps, especially once the truck comes back and I kind of fit them up and see how everything lines up. And that will be included in a later video. But that's a wrap for this one. So thanks again for watching. Give me a like, a share, subscribe. I'm looking forward to doing more videos in 2023. So once again, Happy New Year. Thanks for watching. And we will catch you in the next video, which is probably going to be a remote control car video. So just giving you guys a little bit of a warning. While I'm filming that remote control car video, I am going to get back to doing some work on this and, you know, my fender and all that stuff that you have seen before ad nauseum. Hopefully, you know, after doing that RC video, I will be able to get the truck back and actually do some videos with the truck, but maybe not. And if not, there's still plenty of stuff we can do out here in the garage, and I'm really looking forward to that. So once again, thanks again. I'm going to stop rambling, and we'll catch you in the next video.